Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, ladies.
So last week we had my friend Marty on and had a wonderful discussion with her about several different topics. But I think the highlight all three of us took away from the discussion with Marty was, building friendships as an adult, finding your go-to girlfriends, and just finding those overall friendships as an adult female. So today we're going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that, share some of our experiences, and just kind of talk through some of those things and continue on from last week.
Yeah. I think Marty really I think all with us, the three of us, after we got done having Marty on, we talked about how many topics that she talked about, and that those could just spider out into lots of different episodes. But I think the one that resonated with us the most was that friendship piece. And um I'll just share mine. I remember I was fresh out of college. We had just got married and we moved away from all of our college friends. And we moved to a town that none of our college friends or anybody was there. And I remember being extremely depressed, being so sad. I remember hearing years later from one of our other friends that they were telling the other friends, "Be careful when you call Nikki. You're going to be on the phone for an hour because she's so sad and she misses everybody." I was like, "Oh no." But I felt as an outsider. I really wasn't, I was looking to find that connection and I was really struggling with it. And so that was kind of a dark time for me because I was used to having people around, but I also had to learn, okay, what does that look like? Where do I go find those people? And often when we start with a job, we start to make those connections with people. But sometimes you work a job and you don't really want to be friends with them, or I'll just say in like education where I'm at, if you're depending upon where you're at, if you're in administration or certain things like that, I mean, you still want to be friendly with the people that you work with, but it's not looked upon we shouldn't be best friends with somebody that we oversee or we supervise. And so, um, I think sometimes we think that, those people that we have in high school, maybe they're going to be our lifelong friends, and they turn out to be, it's the saying I think is true that it's sometimes for a season, sometimes it's for a second, sometimes it's for whatever. So I think that kind of leads into, I just think about how I was when I was in my 20s and how that progressed. But I know JennyLee, I can see she has something to say, so I want to give her that time to add into that.
No, I just understand all that. And what I was gonna say, you said there's a season. What did you say? There's a season,
There's it's like for a season, a day, a month, or a year, or a season. There's like a saying, and I can't think of what the
and
exact.
I was going to say, or for a reason. Like I
Yes.
think for a reason. It's like I look back at all the friendships that have came and gone, and there's some, lots that are still there, and some that are not. And even the ones that weren't good or didn't end well, there was a. I look back now as a more mature, and I've been through a lot more things. As there was a reason for that, that we grew through that, and I learned something through that, or it led me to the next thing, or led me to another friend. But definitely, I remember when my girls were like fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. I think that's like the hardest stage. I remember seventh and eighth grade were horrible. And now it starts even a little younger, but I remember telling them that, like, you guys, you're with these friends for a short period of time, and you are, when as an adult, you're going to look back years later, you're going to have other friends come into your life, years and years of friends coming, into your life, that I remember at times when things were really hard for them, to try to tell them that. It's really hard to explain that to a 12-year-old, because at that moment, those friendships mean so much. But you're right. You look back, and I do have a couple from high school. One gal who I've stayed friends with the whole time. What we do is we get together on our birthdays. So twice a year we get together. And there's like sometimes during the year that's almost the only time we talk, is twice a year. We might get on the phone once or twice in between there, but our lives are busy, our kids are busy. But the minute we get together, it just takes off. And then another of my high school really good friends, we had lost touch for a long time. And now it's somebody that Nikki knows. She came back into my circle in my 40s, and now we are very, very close again. But there was that time in between where you're living your lives. But I think as we learn to when you're young, you think that if people aren't giving you all their time, that they don't want to be your friend. And then you start to learn and grow and go, oh, wait, they have lives too. And I have lives. We're just doing different things at the moment. That doesn't mean you're not friends. You can come back together. It just takes some effort to do that.
I see a lot of nodding, Shell. What's up?
Um, I think the season thing is huge for friendships, you know. I've experienced that going from my 20s into my 30s, as well as moving like you did, Nikki. I mean, we literally moved all the way across the US, and it was very isolating for me. But I think at the same time, I was navigating the friendships not only from afar, but also that we were in completely different seasons of life now too than we even were in our 20s. um, I have a friend, her and I have been friends for 16 years. I'm actually in her wedding next weekend, and her and I had to have a discussion a few months ago because it felt like our friendship had completely changed. And so we both were kind of navigating this like uncomfortable feeling of like, are we not friends anymore? Because our friendship just wasn't the same as it was. And it came down to, you know, the distance between us. You know, she lives in Montana, I'm living all the way down in Texas. The distance was a big thing, but we're also at different seasons of our lives too, even though we're the exact same age. And we kept going back to our friendship in college
Mhm.
and, you know, in our early 20s, and being like, well, we didn't have to work through some of these challenges together. You know, I wasn't a mom in my early 20s. She wasn't navigating big life changes too, like getting married. And she has moved 3 or 4 times now in the last 10 years. And just those different seasons can be age wise or experiences. And I think we're all navigating that at different points in our lives. And it's just interesting to see how friendships morph, but how some friendships do stick around. You know, a friendship that I've had for 16 years, we had to have that first time uncomfortable conversation of like, do you still want to be my friend? Um,
Mhm.
but there are some friendships, like Jenny said as well, that you know you have to let go of them. They were there for a short season, kind of like you said, Nikki. You might have a friend for a month because maybe you can relate on a really hard topic and talk through it together. Or maybe you work together and they take a different job and they leave, and you know that friendship just changes, or they're no longer in your life to that extent with you anymore. So it's really cool to get to talk through this with both of you and share our experiences. But I think really just those different seasons and different times, and everyone comes into your life for a reason.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if anybody, I think JennyLee did read the book Let Them by Mel Robbins. Okay, so Shelf has too.
I'm reading it right now,
Okay.
actually.
Okay. Spoiler
I,
alert.
I
So
know I just finished it Saturday.
okay. So in there, you know, I could talk about all kinds of books that I love that are self-help books too. I'm a big Boundary Boss by Terry Cole, love her, but I also wanted to know, like, I love listening to Mel Robbins, but I wanted to know, like, what does she say in her book for people? I think that it's a little bit more um, not as deep than Boundary Boss, those types of things, but it's along the same lines. It's helping us figure out what's our responsibility. But in there, there's a chapter on friendships, and she talks about how that she found herself too, like everybody, you know, people were going to do things, and she was like, I didn't get invited. Like what happened? And then your heart gets hurt, you know, and things like that. And so then she talks about the percentage of time that we end up spending with people that we work with. And I think it's like 80% of our time. And so no wonder a lot of the people that we work with tend to be our friends. However, they're not necessarily always people that we would have picked out in a crowd, you know? And so and if you like your job, that's going to affect your relationship. If you don't necessarily like your job, that might affect your relationship. But I won't spoil it because definitely read the book. But she talks about how, and it definitely, I think that's what both of you were saying, and JennyLee was saying that too, is that like if your kids, usually I think about that because now I'm an empty nester, right? So I was there and I was, going to the different games or different activities, and I'd be there with my kids as parents, or their friends as parents. And so then you did have that connection. And as they grow, then you kind of grow apart. And so, it's the same old adage that we talk a lot of times about quality versus quantity. I'm going to bring up, it's not so recent, but when we found out that our daughter had been killed in a tragic car accident, in that moment, you know, I had to make a call, and I made a call to a friend. And here's the thing, sometimes we don't know who we would call. A lot of times you think it's going to be one person and it turns out to be somebody else. And in that time, I was calling that friend because her child was my son's best friend. And so I was thinking of him. But man, and it's nothing against that friend. It wasn't that I wasn't not calling her to tell her. I mean, they were all going to find out some way or somehow. But I was calling her because of the intention for taking care of my kid. But man, did she and a whole cadre of my friends step up, including JennyLee. They all just took turns and showing up. And I had lots of people come to me afterwards and say, that's an anomaly. That doesn't necessarily happen for everybody. I even had some people say, I'm just here to tell you that wouldn't happen for me. And I did not take that badly. I took it in the way that they were just trying to tell me how blessed I was. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to have quantity, you don't have to have 20 friends. You can have one or two and it still fills the soul, right? But I will say for me, that's kind of always how I've been. I've always loved having different pockets of friends. So depending upon how I'm feeling or what I'm into at that point in time, and most of the friends, I mean, I've lost them over time, and that's again, they were probably only meant to be there for that amount of time. Um, they know that about me, so they allow me to fluctuate, sometimes, and I think, Shelby, when you said having that conversation, I think often that gets lost. People get lost in the hurt. I think about it's the same friend that I called, okay, to tell about Gracie passing, that probably, I don't know, 7 or 10 years earlier, she called to say, that her, or no, my husband's cousin and this other friend group were going on a trip in this motorhome. And they called to tell me about it. And I mean, it was like knife through the heart, right? Like, okay, so you called to tell me you're going on it or you're doing this with my friends, but then I'm not invited. And I remember that feeling of thinking, is life going on? Because even Mel talks about that in the book. She's like, so all these people are doing great things, and I'm just over here like I'm chopped liver and nobody even thinks about me. And what it is that, you know what? It works both ways. It's that we have, as we're sitting over here wanting someone to either send us a text message, give us a call, say, hey, let's have lunch, let's go for coffee. There's how many other people out there wanting that as well. And so as I started to realize that, some of the people in my life, I've had to remind them, including myself, saying, pick up the phone. Because they will say, well, it must be nice to have all those friends. I'm like, hey, it's like a garden. It's something you have to cultivate. If you want to have more friendships, you have to do the work. It's just like other things, just like if you want to be really good at your job, you have to do maybe the, extra work. I'm not saying like work 100 hours a week. That's not what I'm saying. But if you want to be good at something, if you want to be an expert knitter, you got to spend time doing it. And it's the same with friendships. When people ask me what my hobbies are, I would say actually, it's friendships. If you know me. I mean, I love spending time with people, but I would say also what I've learned is that you have to realize that's where the quantity versus quantity is, that some of those people aren't meant, you have to realize if they are being bad for you. You know, that relationship is taking you down, or it's not allowing you to grow. You don't have to go up and say to them, by the way, I'm not going to be a friend of me anymore, right? You just kind of faded. I mean, if you want to, you can do that. It's probably not going to help you get more friends. I mean, you can say, you know, you can be honest and say, you know what, I think we're going in two different directions. And then it helps you also know what you really do want, right? Yeah.
I think being open and honest in a friendship like that does go a long ways. It helps guide the friendship the direction that it's probably going, that both of you likely know and can feel anyways. I feel like as a female, we have like that inner understanding of like this is what's going on, and maybe we just don't address it because it is really uncomfortable, or we don't want to accept maybe the fact that we're not as good of friends with somebody that we've been friends with for several years anymore. You know, that hurts just as much as the lingering cloud that's over us of like, oh, I don't really know what's going on in this friendship.
Yeah.
But I also think having those really difficult conversations with a friend too can also strengthen your friendship, because that unspoken feeling that's hanging over both of you creates a lot of tension. In my example with my friend from college, you know, we both, because I opened up and said to her, hey, I feel like we're not as good as of friends as we used to be. Like, what's going on here? Are you feeling that? She literally like let out like a,
I
like,
was feeling that too. Yeah.
yes. And she was
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, I am so glad you brought this up. She's like, I've been wanting to say something to you for the last couple of months, but I didn't know how. And part of us not bringing that up together was because we still had that 20-year-old mindset too of, if I bring this up to Shelby, is she going to feel attacked by that? Are we going to get in a big blowout fight? Because if we would have brought that up in our 20s, it probably would have been a knockdown, drag out, you know, immature texting war of like, well, you do this and blah, 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 blah. Well, maturity plays a huge factor, I think, in friendships too, but having that communication with one another to be like, hey, this is what's going on, but receiving it really well too. So I think you're really onto something with that, Nikki, like self-reflecting and being like, what do I bring to the friendship as well? I'm actually in that chapter of Mel's book, and that's a lot of what she's talking about in the let them theory, is really like putting it back on yourself though too, like letting yourself, and I know Jenny, you and I have had conversations of that, you know, like it goes beyond like, oh, just let them do whatever they're going to do, but it comes back to self-reflecting on yourself. You know, what do I offer to the friendship? Have I been there in the expectations that I would have of that friend too? And so having that uncomfortable conversation with my friend from college opened that door to kind of break that tension that was building. But for both of us to kind of self reflect and be like, oh, you know, I have been really busy as a first time mom and like moving down here. You know, I had done a lot of the same things that she is currently going through. A big move. I got engaged right away. We got married right away. You know, they're getting married here in the next week. They're planning to have a family. So just that busyness kind of overtook the friendship. And I was like, man, here I'm sitting here thinking that she's not contributing to the friendship. And at the same time, I wasn't contributing that same energy back as well. And so as you were talking, Nikki, I was just really thinking of, you know, that self-reflection. What do you have to offer to friendships, to meet the expectations that you put on other friends as well? But also, one thing I had to really accept for myself is sometimes maybe I'm the friend that people are like, I'm glad Shelby's not in my life anymore. Or maybe I'm the temporary friend that somebody learned a huge life lesson and is like, you know, that sucked getting put through that with you, but thank you for being that lesson learned. I would like to also think that I'm somebody's lifelong best friend, that we like get through all the grit and everything together. Or the temporary friend that's like, hey, I'm gonna reach out to you because I'm going through a really hard time and I'm like drawn to you for some reason. But there's different seasons, different expectations, different energies that we are putting out. And I think I know I just wanted to
So
keep
much.
going on what you were
I
saying.
know, so much, so much.
Sorry, Jenny,
Well,
do you want to?
no, you guys are saying so many good things, and there's so many things I want to say, but the what you were just saying too about having that conversation with your lifelong friend, I think is learning and navigating through life of that. Now you guys have given each other permission to, yeah, we're still friends, but it's okay if we don't talk all the time. Like in your 20s, maybe that was not said out loud, but an unwritten part of your friendship was we talk all the time, and now it's like you don't have to do that. And that's one of the biggest things I've learned in life is friendship, like I said earlier, changes drastically. When you're in junior high, you spend every day with those friends. You're on, and now, especially with phones and stuff, they're on, it's like 24/7 they can talk to their friends. And then as you get married and you have kids and you have a job, all of that starts to shift. And I think just respecting each other's space is huge. Like respecting that they're living their lives and being happy for them, even when you don't have time together in that time. One of the things I wanted to mention too is like back when the shift of I was a working mom till my girls were a year and a half and 3 years old, and I became a stay-at-home mom unexpectedly. It wasn't like I planned to stay at home. I left a job with the intention of finding another job. And at the very same time all of that happened, my husband's job, it kind of like really took off. He was working 80 to 100 hours a week and it was crazy busy. And we decided that I was going to try to stay home for a while. And that first year was so hard because I suddenly shifted from being at work with adults and humans, every day to being at home with these littles. And my friends were working and had their own families to take care of, the friends that I was used to being with all the time. And I did not know very many stay-at-home moms at the moment. However, my community was growing. There was an oil boom in our area, which is why my husband was so busy. And so, yeah, he was busy too. So I literally was home alone all the time. And but he pushed me. Like I wanted to start a little play group and put posters up around town. It was summertime. Meet me at the park. I put like Mondays and Thursdays at, I think one was at 9 a.m. and one was at like 2 p.m. or something. And I said, just meet me here. So I put posters. I live in a town of like 800 people, you guys. So it's a little town. So it's safe to do that. So meet me at the park at these times. I went 9 times. I'll never forget, 9 times, and nobody showed up. And my husband really encouraged me to go. He even made me go drop off flyers at some homes where he's like, I seen a new family move in this house. Go knock on her door and give him a flyer. You guys, that was like terrifying, but I did it. But 9 times, and I remember him saying, you don't have to keep going. I'm like, you know what? The girls and I have to go outside anyway. So we're just going to be intentional and go at those times. 9 times later, a friend showed up, became one of the women who helped me survive being a stay-at-home mom through those years. And then she belonged to a church that had like a lot of people moving into the area. So she started bringing friends. It became my lifeline, that play group of women. But I had to continually keep going. And now we've shifted. Some of them have moved away. We all got jobs, all our kids in different activities. I don't get to see these women very much anymore. I do know though that if they called and needed me, I'd be there in a second. And I believe that would be the same reverse wise. And so it's been really amazing to see the seasons of friendships. And I expect that to continue to change as my life continues to go on. And the same thing with family. Like my mom's listening right now. We've really tried to make it an intention to get together, like my mom and my aunts and some cousins and stuff, like once a month. It doesn't always happen every month, but we sure try. Whether it's lunch, last month, 3 of us went kayaking. That's all that could get together that day. But really trying to be intentional about those get-togethers, because if you're not, 6 months goes by and a year goes by, and it's Christmas again, versus
Yes.
the little interactions in between.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Oh, intentional. Okay, so I took notes when you guys were each, because there were so many things. Um, Here's the thing, Jenny Lee, though, about that is that because I think that was also one of the things that we wanted to touch on today is like, how do you find those
Mhm.
friends? So like you setting up that time and being dedicated, like it took 9 times before somebody showed up. And I mean, I'm even doing that. I'm just saying, like, finding new friends with my business, right? Having my getaways that I'm trying to get people to come to women to come together and have that connection, right? Because I do hear that so often from women, like we're talking about right now, that we're craving it, right? But one thing I wanted to say is that I want to go back to is that like when Shelby was talking about, her and her friend, that their friendship had shifted. Well, both of you have grown, right? And so what we all know is that some of us, it's just like I said, a garden, you got to tend to it. Two sunflowers can be planted right next to each other, and one grows 7 feet tall and the other one is 2 feet, and it's all different things. And that's the same with us as people. And so when you were talking about that, Shelby, that you kind of felt X, Y, and Z, and so did she. It brings me up to something that I had read years ago. It was like we did a Bible study right after COVID, and one of the books we read is that between 80 to 90% of the time, other people have no idea that we offended them, or that we don't know, they don't know that they've offended us. And so I think that when you and again, Mel kind of touches on that. She doesn't give a statistic to it, but she talks about that in her book as well. And that so many times we'll be over here stewing about something like, oh, did you see Shelby raised her eyebrows when I said X, Y, and Z? Yeah, she's pissed, right? I just know it. She is like, Nikki talk too much, whatever. The story we have in our head that we're telling ourselves. And then when we find, if we get up the nerve to actually say something to that person, they're like, oh my God, no, I had an eyelash in my eye. And so I was trying to get it out without looking like going like this on camera, right? But we tell ourselves because we're often so insecure, and I mean, been there, done that, still have that happen. We think that we're not worthy of that friendship. So I just want to remind everybody that, 80 to 90% that we think somebody's offended us, but they're oblivious to that. So then, it's more often than not that actually none of that is true. It's just that we tend to look for the bad or the wrong in the situation. The last thing that I wanted to talk about, that came up in your guys' conversations, is that I know at least where I'm at in my career is that, okay, so I'm 1 year shy of 50, which I'm not afraid of, I mean, I'm blessed that I'm still here. But at the same time, I know some people, when their kids are out of the house, that's when their careers ramp up. Then they're like, that's when they start being on boards, they start doing all these things, and they really get into their career. Well, I'm here to say that I did that when I was younger. I did all the things. I was on the associations, I was on the board, I was the president, da 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 da. And so for me, 3 years ago, I made the change of saying I wanted to decrease that. I wanted to, and actually I'm listening to a podcast. It's called the Loser. I wanted to talk about, it's called, of course, when I want to find it. It's called Lessons from a Quitter. Sorry. That's a great podcast. She used to be a lawyer. She talks about how she shifted her life and things like that. One of the episodes that I just recently listened to her talk about is she shifted from a 5-day to a 3-day work week. And that's kind of what I've done in the last 3 years is I shifted to a 3-day work week, and then I sprinkle in, some stuff for my business, when I want to and when I need to, and I feel like it, right? So I think that's the other thing is that depending upon what we often think it's other people, but the shift happens because what we want to do, right? So like I will say I had a lot of connections with people in my previous job. I had been in that job 15, 17 years. So I had a lot of connections and a lot of friendships with it. But then when I stepped away, those friendships were built on us being in that together. I mean, some of them are still navigating, but a lot of them were left behind. It wasn't because I don't like the people anymore. It's that was what we were talking about all the time. And so now I really don't want to talk about that anymore because, then I feel bad if something's not going well that I want to help in it. That's not my job anymore, right? But now then I'm moving into this 3-day work week. And somebody else might be listening saying, "Oh my God, as if I wish I could have." Well, you know what? You can. It's all comes back to, and we're going to talk about lots of different things over these different episodes, but you can, but we all think it's somebody else doing it to us, but 3 years ago, or 3.5 years ago, I realized that it was me. Nobody was coming to save me. It was me. So, that shift in now I want it to be slower. I actually don't want to ramp up. I'm like, how much? And I don't think I'm a lazy person. I do not think I'm lazy, but I want to do what amount of work I have to do to live, you know? I want to do more living than I want to do working. And so for me, it's switched. And so I feel like I'm kind of more in that realm of like looking towards people that are retiring or are retired. I mean, I got some time, but I'm just saying when I talk to women that are retired, they just feel such a loss of purpose and they feel like they're just out there spinning in space and they're not knowing like, how do I find new people? Because again, their work were their connections. And now if I'm not in that job, who am I? That's another part of that podcast, that episode and an episode before it is, okay, well, now who am I if I'm not tied to what I do? And I think all three of us here have already started to be on that journey. I know that was pivotal in my life when I realized like I'm not just a school psychologist. I'm not just a special education teacher. Who am I? I didn't even know who the hell I was. So that's been a lot of discovery. And that impacts the people that you have in your life, right? Yeah.
I remember, Nikki, when you first started talking about knowing that you were getting ready or preparing or that you wanted to make a change,
Mhm.
be even before you shifted out of that job. I remember you talking about that. But who am I going to be if I leave that job? Like that's who I identify as and how you felt other people identified you as. I remember that being a big concern for you in that transition.
And I think that ties into our friendships because I mean, this is a whole, again, that's a great podcast. I was just listening to it and she talks about how it's tied to capitalism and right. So capitalism is tied to how much we bring to the table. And if we're busy, we're bringing in lots of money and things like that. But a lot of us women, I think it happens to men too, and a lot of us women just don't talk about it, but then it leaves us empty. And it still can make us feel fulfilled, but at different seasons of life. And then it's like, well, if I'm not doing that, who am I? So I just have to keep doing that because then I know my value to other people. And that's, I think, what leads into the friendships is that when we start to grow, Shelby talked about energy. That's what draws people to us, or we are drawn to those other people because of the energy that they emit and they put out. If their energy is like, I want to have connection with you. I want to laugh till I pee my pants. I mean, there's some people on the screen that I've done that with. I mean, so but that doesn't mean that that's every minute of every day. I think the moral of the story today, and I mean, I think we could take, we've hit 30 minutes. If we want to keep going, we can. But I think that could even, it's I don't know, there's just so many things. Like, I think I told you ladies that I found out early on in my marriage that friendships saved my marriage. Now, that doesn't mean that I was avoiding my husband. There were times that I was avoiding him. That's a whole another whole episode. But I knew I early on I learned there were things he did not want to hear about or talk about or whatever. And so that's where I often would say the best marriages have fantastic girlfriends. I don't mean it that your husband has a girlfriend. I mean that you have a girlfriend. That a girlfriend that you can talk about, yeah, like I'm not trying to steal JennyLee's story, but she always talks about she used to come home and talk about poopy diapers. And Shiloh was like, I want to know. For me, I'd be like, oh my gosh, can you believe this person did this or did blah, blah, blah. And Justin would his eyes would glaze over and, he'd just fall asleep or whatever. And it wasn't even, it was just that I was yearning for that connection. And sometimes I just think about us on such different bandwidths. Mel talks about that as well in her book, that, how many words a day a man uses versus how many words a woman uses. And there's some women out there that are not big talkers, as you can tell I am. And so I'm looking for people that want to do that. They want to have that type of connection. And so I think you might we can talk about where you find those and how you go about that. But realizing that we have to realize what purpose are we wanting that person to serve, to be honest. I mean, really? Because like, are we looking for somebody to be, like if you have a really crappy day at work, you probably don't call your friend that's like, oh my God, everything's so great. No, you're not calling that friend. You're calling the Debbie Downer that's like, oh my God, he is dead to me. You know, you call that person and they're like, they are your wingman for that, right? And it might be two friends, or maybe you just have one and that person can do all of that for you. That's great. But it's figuring out because I think when you figure out what you're looking for, it helps you discover what you have to give.
Mhm.
Because it's more so it's both ways, right? You can't just be out there looking for the best friend and be or friends and like, but what do you have to bring to the table?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I think with that, Nikki, it like kind of comes full circle. What do I have to bring to the table? I think you had kind of touched on it earlier on that, we kind of create these things in our mind that like, oh, well, you don't realize that somebody has offended you and like they maybe haven't even offended you. I don't know exactly how you worded that, but it made me think again of that same college friendship. I was thinking of all of these things that she was doing to me or I was doing to her. And I think it really came down to like, I was trying to kind of self reflect and thinking of the things that I wasn't doing
Mm.
for her in our friendship. And instead of like realizing, kind of my faults or where I was falling short in the friendship, I was like, well, she's not doing this for me. She's not offering, she's not reaching out. She doesn't want to meet my daughter. We're not as good of friends because she doesn't want to meet my daughter. Like those types of thoughts and feelings I was creating when it really like I wasn't putting energy back into the friendship. So I think I was trying, hopefully this is making sense. I was trying to like self-reflect, but like putting the blame on her instead of, accepting the fact that like, well, you know what, I'm not putting the same amount of energy into the friendship that I would expect
Well,
back
and how many
as well.
times does that happen that okay, so the person isn't calling us, or we ask them to, hey, let's get together in San Antonio for the weekend camp. And she just sends that like can't. And what do we read into it? Oh my God, she gave me one word. I mean, seriously, you can't even give me more than that, right? And so we're making the story up like she's not putting in the time. You ask her again, like, hey, do you have time for a call? No, I don't. I'm busy today. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, like she just doesn't have time for me. Okay, so then we would finally have time, right? And we actually get that time to talk to that other person. The other person saying, when I said can't, I was in between, I was in a meeting and I didn't want to have my phone out. And I was like, can't. So, but so many things that we read into just a text, right? Or in black and white. And there's none of the context in it. Like she's like trying to give you the answer right away so you know, but then you're reading into it that she's saying can't. Like,
Yeah, like why are you being so cold to me? What did I
oh,
do? And then it's that rabbit hole,
oh, yes.
I actually shared it on my social media, I think yesterday. It was, sorry, I probably read your text and then saw my toddler carrying a stool across the house.
So true.
Right? So I don't know how many times someone in this group, even in the Real Joy Project, reached out to me a few days ago and sent me an audio message being very like brave and vulnerable, like, hey, kind of reaching out to me about like her little side business to see if I was interested. And I listened to the message at like 7:30 in the morning and my daughter woke up for the day and it's like I'm from one task to the next. And it took me until the next night. I was like, oh my gosh, I listened to that and I didn't even answer her back. And so I was like, okay, if somebody did that to me, that I would feel terrible. I would be like, okay, like this girl just read my message and didn't even respond, and I can't assume that she felt that way or anything either.
Right.
But
Right.
I did reach out to her and be like, hey, I'm not ignoring you. Like life just got busy. Thank you for reaching out and being brave, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's just we don't know what's going on in other people's lives either. Like you
Yeah.
said, you don't know if your friend is in that meeting or if they really are being cold to you, or, if you're just going down that rabbit hole. But I think one thing that I have learned in relationships across the board, whether it's with my husband, with a girlfriend, even with you guys as co-hosts on here, is the one thing that is huge is communication, being able to communicate with those people that you want in your life or that are in your life for a reason. And communication sometimes can be those hard conversations of, hey, I don't like your idea for this, I don't want to do this and this is why.
Yep.
Or telling my husband, you kind of touched on this, Nikki, of like, who am I outside of being a mom, and trying to explain that to him, and having that hard conversation with him of, hey, I've literally have conversations with a toddler and our dog all day long, and like my only other conversations can't be at Lakin's gymnastics class with some of the moms who are also like chasing their kids around and like just looking to de-stress too, or the cashier at the grocery store. Like I need some sort of outlet as a mom, but having those difficult conversations goes into that communication thing as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think about when you talk about the stage that you're at right now, Shelb, I remember I was in grad school. Gracie was 2 months old, and Justin would go to work and then he'd come home and I would go straight to college. I'd go do my classes. I'd take her to daycare during that time, pick her up right after that because we couldn't pay for extra. And he'd get home and he would have been at school all day plus coaching. He got home and he'd just want to decompress and not talk to anybody. And I was like this little chihuahua, like, hey, can we go somewhere? I want to talk to people. Like I needed to, so I can relate to that. I so can relate to that. And that's why I always said after that, I don't think I could be a stay-at-home mom. I'm like, and I am, what I mean by that is that I just needed to be moving, and I'm like, and I know some of my friends that are stay-at-home moms and like, I still move, I'll go around, I do. But in my head, I needed to be doing something else. And so I remembered that disconnect. Like he would come home and he would need to decompress, and I needed to like expel some energy. I needed to go. I'm like, can we go walk around the mall? And he's like, walk around the mall? Are you kidding me? So, and I too was looking for that connection with, because none of my colleagues in grad school, they were all younger than me. So there wasn't anybody in there that I could talk to about having, I was actually mothering them versus, you know, so I get that. And I think I think you bring up that really key point is it's communication with everybody. And that if we don't say something, then we make up the story in our head. And 9 times out of 10, that story that we have now told ourselves in our head is way worse, right? Because like then it just builds and builds and builds. It's like, yep, well, now it's 4 days that Shelby hasn't responded to me. So she must be ignoring me. And it's that, you know what? Hey, we didn't know she went to Puerto Rico for the week, you know? So yeah, I just think there's JennyLee, I see you nodding a lot. So anything you want to add?
No, you guys are all just so spot on. And the other thing I was gonna like commend Shelby for is I see her, as a stay-at-home mom, those first few months were hard. Once I got things rolling, we used to joke that the stay-at-home mom part, like I forgot the stay-at-home part of it. because I became so involved in things because I needed that connection. I needed that connection with women and moms, and and I want to commend Shelby, as I see her doing that already. That, like, she's there, she's going to mommy and me play groups and swim lessons and different things like that. And as a young mom, that's one way to meet new people. And it can be uncomfortable, and it can be when you don't know people and you're walking into this strange group. But I will promise you that half the other ladies in there are also walking in alone and thinking the same thing. And so being brave and having the courage to say those first few words to somebody at those groups could turn into your like next lifelong best friend. I don't always like the term best friend because I always feel like it limits you to one, where I feel like I have a tribe of best friends, like, and but I just want to commend you. I see you doing that, Shelby, already. So you're doing awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I mean, it has really made me like have to put myself out there, because I never in a million years, if you would have asked me even 5, 6 years ago if I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, I would have been like, no, there's no way. I did not grow up babysitting. I did not like babies. Like babies scared me. Like my boss when I worked in North Dakota, they have 5 or 6 kids now, and they would bring their babies and toddlers and stuff them into the office, and they would it was almost like kind of a running joke, like the baby would start crying, they're like, hurry, give the baby to Shelby, and it's like, no, I don't know what to do, like, your kid is crying, like, please take it back. So I never thought that I would want to be at home and spending all of this time. And, I heard so many times, well, it's different when it's your kids. And absolutely, it is different. I could spend all day, every day at home with Lakin, but I still find those moments where I'm like, who am I? I can't just be Lakin's mom. I do want to be Lakin's mom, and that is a huge piece of me, but I had to kind of put myself out there and be really vulnerable. I mean, even when we moved before becoming a mom, it was like, okay, I have to completely start from scratch now with my friend groups. I can't just force my husband's coworkers' wives to be my friends. Like, it doesn't work that way. That'd be great. It'd be easy feeder system if we went to an event and it's like, yeah, I'm now best friends with my husband's work friend's wife. But that's not how it works. So I think to anyone out there that maybe is in that stage of like trying to find those new friends, or, you know, putting yourself out there, it's being vulnerable and searching out those things. Both Jenny and Nikki have commented on this, that finding what you want in a friendship and then being that energy in the friendship too will attract those type of people to you. But being vulnerable and just like getting out there and finding those people, it can be really uncomfortable and hard, but it's absolutely worth it. I know this is probably for like my generation, but I had to get on an app where I'm swiping women, like the Tinder app, like you, right? Like, yeah, you look great, I want to be your friend, yes, yes, like, so being on there, and then living in a large city. I mean, I grew up in a tiny town. Like, I joke that it's a micro town. I think the population right now is 30. So being on an app and like, yeah, I'll drive 18 miles to come and see you in downtown Houston at a Pilates studio. That was where I met one of my really good friends now through the app. And I remember we got on there and we're talking back and forth, everything's great. And then when we met in person, she was like, thank you for being a real normal human and like me not running away. And I'm like, thank you for showing up and like
Yes.
being who you said you were. But sometimes you have to put yourself out there and be vulnerable and find those people that put off that same energy that you also return to them too.
Yeah, so what I would say, Shelby, is like you took what you learned with your college friend, right? And then translate or transferred that onto the new friends that you are starting to make, right? Say, so it's telling them like, thank you for being brave and showing up. Thank you for being, because that's the other thing. That here's the thing, it's just like dating, right? Like not every person that you dated did you end up marrying. So part of that is this navigating, and I think I just think of like women of all ages in my life that sometimes I remember even one of my siblings saying, I thought there would be less drama as I got older. I'm like, "Ooh, well, that's not necessarily always true. And what it is it's the people that you surround yourself with, and there's going to be some of that. There's no perfect environment. But I think that the moral that what we're really trying to say is put yourself out there. Whether you're looking at an app or you go to a mommy and me class, or, as you get older, like me, and JennyLee, you're retired, what are some, like, go to a painting class, go to a swim class, go to a yoga, or go to try a new church, different things like that. But then you also can't sit there and look like, don't approach me, right? So I know that I mean, I get nervous too, even though I can talk to just about anything in a rock. I mean, I get nervous. I don't always want to be the first person, but I'm like, but if it means, like, right now you're in a really bad place and you would like to have that connection, what are you willing to do for that? Are you willing to step outside your comfort zone, go to something that you normally don't go to, look on the Facebook pages or the, pages in your town, like Shelby just talked about, and find out what events are going on, if there's like an art in the park or different things like that. Or make a post like JennyLee did and said, I know that, and I can't think of what that's called. There's like these things where people will put them out on like the internet post boards and say, hey, we're going to meet at this place at this time, and like 100 women show up. Just now that that everybody is there for the same reason. They're lonely, they want connection, they want other people to talk to, so you're all there for the same reason. So you just start making a conversation with that person. Now, if you're like, I don't want to do the in-person thing, then there's plenty of people that are like, you know what, hey, you want to like, even if you use that app or you reach out and you send a message, like Shelby said, she got a message from someone that was in our group here. I mean, if that is what you're looking for, you have to decide what is, what level that you're looking for. But I think that the moral of the story is that we all change, right? And who maybe our friends were when we were younger, when we were kids, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, that morphs because we don't stand still either. And so then just coming back to, what do you want? I think of some of the women that I know in my life that maybe they've lost a spouse and they're not interested in finding, love again or something like that, but they really want companionship, which that can come from friendship. It doesn't mean it has to be a man. It can mean that, I just really want to have connection with somebody and like maybe go to things with. I want to go to a musical, or I want to go to something that's being put on. And so it's just starting to have those conversations. And sure as heck, it can be nerve-wracking as all get out, but I think that's one of the biggest things that we're wanting to come from the Real Joy Project, is that maybe in where you're at right now, you don't feel like you have that you can go out, or maybe you don't feel you're in a place that you can do that. But then you can join us. You can join us and you can feel the connection. Hopefully you can feel our energy. I know I can be a little animated at times. Hopefully you can feel our energy coming through the screen and know that we're wanting to connect with you and we can feel your energy coming back to us. So I think today's topic was one that I think a lot of women go through, almost all women go through. I mean, even some of the most independent women that I know that say, I don't need anybody, they need a friend. They need somebody to connect with and have their back, and just to be able to go through the good things and the bad things together, and just the mundane. Like, I mean, if my kids don't put the toilet paper on that roll one more time, I think I'm going to burn it all and they're going to have to figure it out themselves, whatever it is, to have that connection with each other. So I just want to say thank you for everybody that joined us today. And be sure to go on our YouTube channel and hit subscribe and join us next week. We don't know exactly what day. I think it'll still be Thursday in the morning, but we'll drop the link for you guys and know that we really appreciate you guys showing up. Do you have anything else, JennyLee?
I have some real shorts too. Thank you. That was an awesome conversation. Couple of real quick thoughts is also, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. It's not about having tons of friends. It's about having quality friendships. The other thing I wanted to mention real quick is when you're in that crowd or you're in a situation and you're not feeling brave enough to make that first connection, make it about them. Look around the crowd. Who else looks like they need a friend? And make it about her and be like, she looks like she needs somebody to say hi to her. I can do that. It takes the pressure off of you and you're making it about them. And she's going to appreciate you saying hi. So that sometimes helps me take that first step of, that lady looks like she needs somebody to say hi to her. I'm going to go sit by her. And it makes I feel a little braver when I do it that way. And then the other thing I wanted to mention real quick was I wanted to tie back in case anybody is wondering what books we were talking about. The first one was The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And then you mentioned the podcast Lessons from a Quitter. And then you mentioned another book about boundaries. Can you repeat that one?
Yes, it's called The Boundary Boss by Terry Cole. Terry is Terri, Cole, Cole. And she has a podcast as well, which is phenomenal. And she talks about boundaries, and you might be like, I'm good on boundaries. I would venture to say you probably aren't. And what I mean by that is just, I didn't realize like how many times over, I want us to be able to talk about that on another day, but how many times we think we're holding boundaries or we have boundaries, but we don't. And how if we're unhappy in our life, it has a lot to do with what we're allowing other people to do to us and what we're doing to other people. So, and that's what Mel Robbins' book is all about. She just doesn't say it that way. That's really what Let Them is all about, is about the boundaries, what's your responsibility and what is not. And so, I feel like the Let Them theory, and really it comes down to let me, let you do you, and I'm going to do me. And so that's like, this is my side. And so how Terry Cole talks about it, this is my side of the street. And that's your side of the street. And I'm going to let you take care of your side and I'm going to take care of mine. And so I just love that she dives deeper into it. And for somebody that was a people pleaser, high, high functioning codependent, meaning that I was always, seeing how everybody else was functioning, and then I would adjust and adapt and be highly independent. I don't need anybody's help. I'll be the martyr, that kind of thing. Stay tuned. We'll talk lots more about that. But that's what she's talking about. And I just love her no nonsense kind of way of talking about it. And so I just love to be able to give people, thanks for bringing that back around, JennyLee, because because a lot of times people will say, well, where are you getting that from? Where did you learn that from? Or, that kind of stuff. So I love for us to be able to share the books that we're reading, the podcasts that we listen to, what documentary have you watched, or, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Yep.
So thanks for that.
Perfect. I think we're going to let Shelby sign off because I can see her little one.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're done for the day.
Yeah. All right. It's good. I think we're done anyway. So
yes.
Thanks for joining us, ladies, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Everybody have a great rest of your week.